Dr. Lanoue, thank you for speaking with me today.
Well, thanks for having me here today. It's a great opportunity to have this conversation.
First of all, congratulations on being named Georgia's Superintendent of the Year. And in less than a couple weeks, you'll be heading out to San Diego to attend the AASA National Education Conference as a finalist for the National Superintendent of the Year Award. Congratulations for that as well.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's pretty humbling for sure.
Now, I know obviously you can't get inside the heads of the AASA, the selection committee there, but what do you think they might have seen in the Clark County School District and in your leadership specifically that might have led them to name you as one of the four finalists?
Um, First of all, I think, I'd like to think it was just a work of the district. I mean, when you start putting down on paper all that we do and what we've accomplished, it's pretty amazing. Um, and I think a lot of that is really focused on closing the achievement gap, is what we expect of our students, that we don't have excuses, that teachers work diligently, collaboratively to have the right practices to make sure our kids get it, and then engage our kids in a whole range of activities. And of most recent, I think that's been most exciting is we take risk with our kids to succeed, because we often ask kids to take risk and then put things in a way where they can't. But we've really opened that door to take risks with kids, so we really want them to go to a place they never thought they could be.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned closing the achievement gap. Obviously, Clark County is a district that struggles with a high level of poverty, and that's, as you mentioned, been a goal of yours and other school administrators and teachers to help close that gap. You guys have definitely had some success with that. Back in 2010, the district was honored as a Title I Distinguished District, indicating that you guys were making some serious progress in closing that gap between students of different economic backgrounds. What specific strategies have you found to be effective in closing that gap? And I think you named a few of them.
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, it's us collectively believing in our kids, and then taking that belief and translating it into what kind of practices do we need to have to get there. It's been my position, if you teach it, someone has to be learning on the other end. And so, I think we've worked on what is it that we need to do and how do we need to do it for our kids to learn, have the knowledge and learn the skills that they need to in really inspiring ways. And so we've done it through collaboration, we've done it through best practices, we've created digital learning environments, we created multiple opportunities for our kids to experience an educational environment in a risk-free way. But most of all, I would like to think that our parents and our kids have confidence in the work of our schools and our teachers, and I think that's probably been one of the most dynamic changes, or probably the most effective changes, is that we built a high level of trust across the board.
And how have you guys worked towards building that trust with the families, students, and the school system?
One is, I think we've been open and honest. I mean, we're very transparent in our performance and our conversation, so it's not like we're hiding anything. It's really out there, like the good, bad, and the ugly. And some is great, and some is not so great, and some has been pretty ugly. But we know we're going to have those things, and the big thing is we realize something's working, that we're going to change it. But we worked really hard to partner with parents. I think there was a point in time when people blamed poverty, they blamed the community, and our thing was, we got to get it right when our kids come through our classroom, and as soon as they start getting it right, I said, then we're going to need to ask for some help. But I think it's really the way we talk with parents. It's a big difference when you say, we got to work together because your child needs to succeed. And that's been a whole different message across the board.
And one thing that you've pushed specifically to help students of all, throughout the school system is technology in the classroom. And you've actually been honored as one of the top 50 technological innovators in education by the Center for Digital Education. Right. That's quite an achievement. How important would you say, and obviously you feel it's important, technology integration in the classroom, and how is CCSD increasing students' exposure to technology?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we are, I would say we're a front runner in the state and a front runner in the country. I mean, I was invited down to the White House with President Obama and the group. We did Ed Connect and talked about connecting America. Had an opportunity to speak with 100 superintendents around the country about who are trying to do the same kind of work. And I believe that connecting our kids is probably the next game changer in closing the achievement gap, because now all kids have access to information. Now all kids have a set of tools where they don't right now. Now all kids have the same set of tools. And so what we've been able to do, we built a robust network. We've got we put processes in place where we've got digital devices in grades 3 through 9, but it's really to change instruction. When you go in the classroom, it's a new game. Our kids are engaged in a very, very different way with a set of tools. Not perfect yet, because we know we've got some access issues out there. But we pushed out 2,000 computers to parents on a refurbish that we had to make sure they had access. Because we want them to be digitally connected. We use Symbaloo pages to create all kinds of resources for those parents and kids. And when we rolled out our devices to parents, quite interesting. One, it was a very simple question that says, is by having digital tools, has it helped you be a better parent? And 99% said yes. So, I mean, it not only helps kids, but it helps parents to be able to access information.
And I was going to ask you about that summit at the White House. Right. What was the agenda for that event?
The agenda is that our president has been forward thinking, and his goal in the next several years is to have every student in this country connected. And through it's called Ed Connect, and they've just pushed out a platform to help frame districts on how they do that, frame communities, and what that means for changing instruction. So I and about 100 other superintendents met simply to have that conversation. What does this mean? And 3 of us from Georgia, our goal is to help make sure that everyone here is future ready. Our state has made some pretty good progress. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the longitudinal data system for Georgia, but Georgia has now a longitudinal data system where we can go in and see our kids' performance when they're here for the last 5 years, right down to domain level and element level in the curriculum. So we can, if we're doing fractions, we can find out what kids in our class did well in fractions, which ones didn't. We have digital resources and a teacher resource link. We, with the state, have helped design something called a learning object repository, where we can store all of our digital content for free, and we tag it to what we want kids to know. And we're piloting right now, we're the first pilot. We really helped design something called the learning tool, which we're doing in 7th grade right now. In Jackson County, just another partner, they just started. But the learning tool will push out when kids open up in the morning, it will push out assignments to them, calendars. They can see their work. Parents should be able to go in to see the quality of work that they're doing, so it's very transparent.
Well, I need this for my classes.
That's right. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Now, the Athens Community Career Academy, which is a dual enrollment opportunity for students, has been a definite bright spot for you guys. Last year, the District Administration magazine named CCSD a District of Distinction honoree because of the Academy's success, and Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle has named it the top career academy in the state. Right. Tell us a little bit about the Academy and what's made it so successful.
Well, first of all, it's different. When you look at the Career Academy, and I think a lot of people would like to get into this old dichotomy, you either go to work or you go to college. Wrong set of questions. What I say, it really, the question isn't whether I go to college or not. That's not the question. Because we know all students are going to need to learn more past high school. Our kids are not going to compete if you just have a high school diploma. And so whether that's a 2-year training program, a 4-year, what we're trying to set up is that kids can really really gain access to opportunities and choices once they leave. So the Career Academy is college. And when I first got here, they said, "What do you mean our kids can't go to college?" I said, "I think only 3 people passed the Compass test." I said, which is the entry to get into Athens Tech. And I said, "Yeah, they can." So the Career Academy, we moved out most of our technical high schools because they weren't being prepared for the workplace, and moved it into a college setting, contracted with Athens Tech. And our students can start college at age 16. It's absolutely free. We don't use Hope Scholarship. We don't use that. We just contract out. They get college credit. They get the instructors. We give them materials, and they get dual enrollment. And so therefore, we have kids that are close to or will have an associate's degree and a high school diploma at the same time, and simply because they're ready. So it's a whole different way to look at it.
And I think this is something that local businesses have been pretty excited about as well.
Yeah, I was just there today. We had a professional day with teachers, and we had 40 businesses that came and wanted to talk to teachers about about workforce development. And but we have some pretty incredible industries just in Athens. And so people think of manufacturing, I think they think of the old model. But if you go to Caterpillar, which is a 1,000,000 square foot plant, I mean, 85% of their employees have to have at least a tech certificate out of a technical college, if not going on to an engineering degree. So the requirements for our workforce are much more, and the manufacturing industry is really exciting. And I truly believe that Caterpillar is here partly because we are open, and we actually have 5 students called the Cat 5. They're going there working, and summer might go on for engineering and get their degree, and it's been pretty exciting. So I think it's been real exciting for our businesses because we can talk about not just that we got workers, but what are the skills necessarily for jobs.
Absolutely. No later than June 30th of this year, as you know, CCSD, along with every other school system in the state, is going to have to decide whether to operate as a charter system,
Right.
an IE squared system, or a status quo system, and then notify the Georgia Department of Education. Right. The plan for you guys at this point is to become a charter system.
Correct.
Assuming that all goes as planned, what are some of the changes that will come with this transition? What are some of the advantages that that students and
Right.
Families can expect to see?
Well, first of all, I think the charter system actually codifies a number of things that we already do now. So one thing it does is it really puts some pretty good processes and said we're going to keep them. But it really, when you talk about charters, really what charters doing is that they're giving you flexibility from rules in exchange for governance. In other words, in exchange for moving governance down into the community. So we'll be creating local governance teams that are going to work with their schools on their school improvement plan. But we're not having them independent schools. They're not going to go do their own thing with hiring. It's the hiring all still occurs at the central office. Recommendations will come from the school. Local governance team do involve hiring of the principal, but we do that now. That's where the process starts. But ours is very different because we're looking at our local governance team to actually build capacity in their neighborhood, to go and define what are the particular needs of their community, their neighborhood defined by their attendance zone, and say whatever we need here to help improve, we want that part of our improvement plan. So if we need an early literacy program for 4-year-olds because we think that's going to help over in this neighborhood, that's what you do. If we need counseling because we have a large number of single parents that are struggling, or if we need health care, or if we need something unique, if we need to have a particular structure in our school because that helps our kids, that local governance team begins to make those decisions. So I hope it takes a real ownership in their community. But it's a very different petition.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it makes the community, like you say, a lot more invested.
That's right.
in what happens.
That's right. I think we have to figure out ways for our neighborhoods, our communities to own. I think schools are still the epicenter of our communities, and when we don't have vibrant communities and schools, we kind of leave I call them dead spots in our community, and we can't afford to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And another change that I saw when I was looking over the application is that the name of the district will probably be changed to Athens Clarke County Community School District.
Right.
What's kind of the message behind that?
Well, I think there are probably 2 parts. First one is that I think it symbolizes the word community, which I think is important as we build. If you look up what community schools as we move closer to that, with some levels of autonomy, I think that ought to be incorporated in our name. And see, it's how Athens, Clarke County is government. When you say Clarke County, people really don't know where that is. So you know what? Let's align that with government. It's Athens, Clarke, larger region, community. That's what we think about in our schools. So I think the name kind of gives it a little bit different, kind of a different reaction than Clarke County School District.
Now, I think you guys have a little slogan, proud to be CCSD,
Yeah, we do.
so you're going to have to rework that a little bit. I don't know if
I
proud
think-
to be ACCSD is going to be quite as easy.
And we'll still be CCSD, but it's I think Anissa Jimenez already talked to me about what that would mean for kind of the branding of materials, but we'll work that out.
There you go. Now, I want to ask you about kind of 2 separate but connected news stories from the past couple weeks. One, State School Superintendent Richard Woods visited a couple schools in the district recently, and one of those was Gaines Elementary.
Correct.
Yeah, and he was very impressed with what he saw. Was very encouraged.
That's right.
Had a lot of positive things
That's
to
right.
say. And then in today's Banner Herald, There was a story about, first of all, that Governor Nathan Deal has recently released a proposal that, if implemented, would authorize the state or the Georgia Department of Education to take over. Actually, I think that it would report straight to the governor.
It would be the Opportunity School District.
Right, the Opportunity School District. And so basically, if a school was categorized as persistently failing, it might be taken over by the state.
Right.
And Gaines Elementary was on that list.
Right.
So I'd just like to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, a couple things. Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, Gaines hasn't been on any list. It hasn't been a priority school, alert school, a focus school. And so even though we know it's got challenges, we've made a lot of changes at Gaines because it really isn't performing where it is. But you know, we've made a lot of changes and sort of, okay, we've got to make changes to get better. So I was a little bit surprised, but it's just kind of interesting that, you know, first of all, that the list came out with 3 years of CCRPI. Well, CCRPI was never used never supposed to do this. And the CCRP of 3 years ago, the one that was one of the years that was used, wasn't even complete. So they didn't even count it because it wasn't even fully implemented. So to create a list on CCRPI that had changed every year doesn't make sense. But, you know, I have strong concerns about this. I mean, you know, I think the message, you know, in that is that people aren't trying to work with their communities, which is so far from the truth of the work. And I don't think our communities ought to be turning over any of our schools to an agency. You know, if we're not doing our job, then someone ought to come in and certainly put expectations on us, but to actually, you know, pull them out and say we're going to run them better, it doesn't make sense to me. And if I look at some of the language, and it may change, you know, what I read in the first round is that if they are taken over by the state, they're taken over for 5 years. But if they don't perform, then the state keeps them for another 5 years. Well, why are you going to keep another 5 years if you haven't got them performing in 5? But you know, the bottom line, I don't think we ought to put any of our schools, what I say is up on the auction blocks for sale. I think you need to work with these communities. And the other part is, what I'm really kind of confused is we just put in this charter system, you know, I squared, these models to help districts that's fully implemented next year. Where did this come from?
Right.
You know, and if there are flexibilities that the Opportunity District is going to give the new state superintendent or wraparound services, why aren't our schools getting them now? Mm-hmm. But I think until we begin to focus on, you know, all the schools that we're talking about are high poverty, economically disadvantaged, and until we begin to look holistically about health care for kids that are not hungry, kids that need stable homes, do you know what I mean, kids that you know, unless we look at that whole package together, then, you know, we're going to get the same kind of results.
And so you think the best approach is for the community to remain involved as opposed to the state trying to fix all the problems.
I don't think the state should take over any school.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. These schools would be responsible directly to the governor's office, not the Department of Education.
That would be correct.
Okay.
That would be correct. And, you know, my piece is if districts aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing and not setting, my piece is I think you got to go right to school boards and the regular superintendent, find out what's your strategic plan. You know, I mean, is it designed to work and fix the schools? Are you implementing that plan, and hold us accountable to that? I mean, I think that's what you ought to do. But to all of a sudden take I call it some arbitrary number, and then just say, oh, you could be, and by the way, it's at the discretion of the state superintendent. So it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of metrics in there. But I don't see where the state ought to come in and take any one of our schools. I mean, they wouldn't take a business. They wouldn't overtake a government.
Right. Now, you mentioned CCRPI a second ago, the College and Career Ready Performance Index.
Correct.
Which is a system used by the Georgia Department of Education to measure school performance. Schools and districts, I believe it's on a 100-point scale, even though it doesn't work exactly like
it's not weighted evenly like that.
Okay. And so Clark County received a 66.1 for 2014. Do you think that's an accurate reflection of the district's performance? And if so, what's holding CCSD back? And if not, what are some other factors that CCRPI doesn't take into account?
Right. Well, first of all, as much as people think that it takes on a broad weight indicators, it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, a good example, the initial CCRPI had that you would get points, for example, if kids moved from 3rd to 4th grade. But then they said, well, that might be grade inflation. So then they said, well, you're only going to get those points if you pass the test. So, I mean, everything comes back to a single test. So I think it's a piece of information that's really helpful. But all of a sudden people think, is a 66 good or bad? Is it 58 good or bad? Is it 92? But those that are in typically your more affluent, areas where, kids are exposed to early literacy, and I mean, that's the biggest piece, is really early literacy. If you have high scores, you're going to stay high scores. If you got populations where you're going to see up and down growth, you're going to see those scores go up and down. So I don't think I think it's a piece of information we ought to use. For example, you get so many points for your lowest 25%. We didn't move our 25%. So, I mean, that was good information. Okay, we made some gains here, but we didn't push the needle on this lowest 25%. So let's focus on that group. So it does help you bring focus, but that's what it was designed to do. It's not designed to do all of these other pieces. But, does that capture all of what goes on in school? Absolutely not. And until people start to figure out that there's a lot that goes on with school. But we have to have that accountability. I believe we have to, but when you look at schools, what happens day in, day out, and the metrics that we use, we use our high performance practice. Those are our metrics. That's what I think is important. And I've said right from day one, I mean, my goal as superintendent for the Clark County Schools is this. Because someone asked me, so can we be the best school in Georgia? Can we be the best school in the country? I don't know what the metrics use. Those really vary. But I said one thing for us is the metric for Clark County is if we can be the best, if our kids in Clark County cannot receive a better education outside of Clark County, then we're the best school.
Absolutely. We were talking before we started taping about how proud you are of the teachers and other school
Absolutely.
administrators in the district.
Absolutely.
If you could just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, and if you ask teachers, they'll probably say, I do believe in the mechanics of teaching, but I also believe teaching is art, and it's about passion. It's about inspiring our kids, and we have a very talented group of teachers. They work hard. They across the board believe in our kids, and our goal is to be able to unlock what it is we can. For kids that come to us with great challenges to move them. I mean, we have some that move tremendously. I mean, we have kids going to Harvard, University of Chicago. I mean, they're going all over, and we got some that are just struggling to get that high school diploma or trying to get you into a piece. And that's what makes our community really strong. But our teachers recognize that, and our teacher leaders do that. They go the extra mile. So I've never been in a district where, on a Friday night, if we needed to go over to one of our housing projects at 4 o'clock and there's an call in the morning, say, when you help, I mean, we'll have, I was thinking some middle schools, we'll have 40 teachers, they'll go over at 4 or 5, do that extra piece, read Saturday morning. So they are pretty incredible.
Right. So their commitment has obviously been very instrumental to the success here.
Yeah, and you won't see that in CCRPI. But a good example, I think, was Superintendent Woods when he came over and saw Gaines, and he saw Cedar Shoals,
right,
and heard the conversations and what people were doing. Even he himself said it didn't align to what a CCRPI score is.
Right. Gotcha. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think on the 26th, or a couple days before that, you'll be heading down to San Diego for the conference. You looking forward to that?
I am. Should be kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah.
That's for the AASA.
Right.
I actually was down in Washington last month on the 15th and interviewed and met the final 4 national finalists, and they'll announce that in next week.
And so obviously you've got the big event where the award is announced. What else is kind of on the docket for those 2 days?
Well, really, it's it's the superintendent's annual conference. So you come, we'll be able to meet colleagues from around the country. So one is just networking, knowing what they're doing, and there's a lot of opportunities to listen to panels, to hear conversations about what's happening across this country. So I'm looking forward to really that's the main part of going out there.
Yeah. And I certainly wish you the best of luck. Hope that you are the one that's announced. That would certainly be something that this school district would be very proud of, and we certainly wish you the best.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's just pretty humbling and pretty honored just to be in this position. So it's great.
Thank you so much for speaking.
Thanks.
With me.
Great.